Billionaire let 3 women use his credit card. What his maid discovered left him heartbroken. David Hawthorne stood in his marble-floored foyer, the weight of his wealth pressing down like a heavy cloak. At 45, he deconquered Wall Street and amassed a fortune that many would deem enviable. Yet, as he watched 3 women from disparate corners of life prepare to use his credit card, a knot twisted in his stomach. Outside his towering walls of glass and stone, the vibrant chaos of New York City pulsed with life struggles and aspirations playing out like a delicate dance, while he remained an untouchable spectator. Maya fought to make ends meet, while Noor lent her voice to the blank canvas of her dreams. Julia, the immigrant, juggled her family back home and countless jobs like a seasoned performer. David wanted to believe that allowing them to shop freely for their charity would elevate them, but it felt hollow. Was his wealth merely a placebo for their suffering? A generous act that would never truly scratch the surface? This question gnawed at him, punctuating his otherwise pristine existence with a twinge of discomfort. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Marisol, his devoted maid, observed the women, her keen eyes detected something that David, ensnared by his privilege, failed to see. She noted the careful decisions, the fleeting smiles as they stacked their purchases. Each item was a vote for their dreams, echoing the sacrifices they had made. It felt grotesque to Marisol, the juxtaposition of David's affluence against the backdrop of their struggles, his casual generosity contrasting their desperate hopes. She scribbled her thoughts in the worn pages of her journal, a sanctuary for her unvoiced emotions, wondering if that same journal could bridge the chasm between their worlds. That night, she steeled herself, heart racing, as she confronted David. "They don't just need your credit card, Mr. Hawthorne," she said softly, her voice quivering slightly. "They need understanding, they need support." David's face twisted with conflicting emotions. Anger stirred, but guilt settled like a cold weight in his chest. How could he who had the world at his fingertips know so little? Marisol's words echoed in his mind, a wake-up call drowning in waves of suffocating unease. His carefully constructed reality began to unravel. The walls of his mansion felt like a cage, enclosing him in a world devoid of depth. He stood paralyzed by indecision, the urgency of Marisol's revelations tugging at his heart. The enormity of their burdens pressed down on him, amplifying a fear he had always kept at bay. What if his wealth was an illusion? A flimsy masquerade hiding the truth that he had grown blind to? Just as he teetered on the brink of a breakthrough appending everything he believed, the phone rang, shattering the silence. It was one of the women, her voice laced with desperation, and David's heart raced. What she was about to reveal could dismantle the fortress he had built around his identity, leaving him vulnerable to the very reality he had turned away from for so long. David's heart thundered in his chest as he answered the call. The voice on the other end, breathless with urgency, belonged to Noor. "David, I need your help," she pleaded, her tone a blend of fear and determination that pierced through the haze of his privilege. "What's wrong?" he asked, anxiety knotting his stomach further. "I don't know how to say this, but my family back home is in trouble. They were relying on my support, but everything is falling apart. I thought that charity would keep them afloat while I fought for my dreams here, but it's not enough." David felt the ground shift beneath him. Noor's vulnerability unraveled something inside him, exposing the isolation he had constructed around his wealth. "Tell me what you need," he said, a surge of instinct propelling him. "I need more than money," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I need you to understand what this means. They are counting on me, and if I can't help them, I don't know what will happen." He set down his glass, the luxury of his surroundings suddenly suffocating. The extravagant chandeliers that once dazzled him now felt like chains binding him to ignorance. Seeing Noor's situation through her eyes ignited an internal war, Could he truly be a force for change, or was he merely a bystander in their lives, exacerbating their struggles with his fleeting generosity? The call ended, and David stood still for what felt like hours, the weight of impending action heavy on his shoulders. He turned to the darkened kitchen where Marisol often brewed him coffee. The scent of her work lingered, reminding him of the unacknowledged burdens they shared, his own fears of inadequacy mirroring theirs. He grabbed Marisol's journal from the table, its pages filled with contemplative scribbles, whispers of dreams not realized, hopes dashed against the stone wall of reality. He flipped through the entries, her innermost thoughts striking chords of recognition within him. David recognized some of his own detached reflections, contrasting sharply with the palpable emotions that surged in her written words. How had he allowed himself to drift so far from humanity? Over the next few days, David began to reach out to the women. He met with Maya first, a decision that filled him with apprehension. He found her at a small, struggling cafe she managed, 2 jobs barely covering her bills. They spoke of dreams wrapped in hope and tethered to hardship. David listened intently, determined to absorb every nuance in her voice. With each interaction, he could feel the walls of his fortress eroding, revealing vulnerabilities he had suppressed. The interactions brought discomfort, but also clarity. Empathy bubbled beneath his tightly controlled exterior. He became increasingly aware of the vast gulf between their lives and his, filled with unfulfilled aspirations and discarded dreams. This interaction culminated in a fierce resolve within him: he could not merely allocate funds without engaging more meaningfully. He began crafting a plan based not on monetary gestures but rooted in real connection, aiming to empower these women in ways that extended beyond his initial intentions. The moment he shared his thoughts with Marisol, the passion ignited. "You have the power to make a difference, David," she urged, her eyes brightening with possibility. "They need mentorship, guidance, the kind that money alone can't provide." David's spirits soared with excitement as he processed this new direction. For the first time, he envisioned a path that could shape not just their futures, but his as well. The next step, however, loomed ominously. Would these women accept his assistance if it meant breaking down their walls and re-evaluating their relationships? As the weight of his newfound purpose settled in, he was struck by a thought: what if my wealth was actually a weapon to forge unity instead of a barrier to empathy? The question hung in the air as he prepared himself to cross that invisible threshold into a world he had long avoided. The lines were being drawn in the sand, and the moment had come to face the lingering question that had haunted him: how far was he willing to go to support their dreams, and would they allow him to share in their journeys? David felt a flicker of uncertainty each morning as he transitioned from the privileged cocoon of his life to the raw vulnerability he had begun to embrace. With each encounter, his awareness deepened not just of the struggles others faced, but of his own limitations in confronting those realities directly. He found himself standing at a precipice, the intricate web of his identity fraying as he realized he must fundamentally change how he perceived himself. He set up a meeting with Noor at a park nestled between the high-rise buildings that surrounded his daily existence. As he approached, he reminded himself to listen more than he spoke. This wasn't about him, it was about her, about understanding the battle waged for her family back home. Seeing her focused expression, he felt the weight of their meeting transform into something serious and urgent. "I've been thinking about what you said," David began hesitantly, his heart racing at the prospect of vulnerability. "You mentioned needing more than money." Noor nodded, her eyes reflecting a blend of hope and skepticism. "I need you to understand. Everything back home is connected: my family, the community I came from. If I can't stabilize them, then I'll lose everything I've worked for here." David's mind raced. He had always believed in hard work and personal merit. Yet, confronting Noor's reality threw that belief into turmoil. He had never wrestled with the idea of systemic failure, but it weighed heavily now. What if I helped in a way that's tangible? Beyond finance? "I don't want to be a charity case," she replied, her voice firm but tinted with lingering fear. "Nothing can replace the effort I put into what I know. Can you commit to that?" The question hung between them like a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down. David nodded. "I want to. But how do I add value?" As they brainstormed, nor shared stories of the skills that women in her community possessed, skills in cooking, crafting, and trading. David was struck by the repressed talent and ambition she described. A radical thought pierced his mind: what if they could create a mentorship program to help these women not just sustain but thrive? Inspired, he laid out his plan. What if we could create an exchange where you teach those skills to others while I market and help promote it? We can start small, even at this cafe of Maya's. It could empower them, give them a voice and create pathways for opportunities. Noor remained silent, processing his suggestions. Slowly, a smile emerged, but it was mixed with uncertainty. You really think that will work? I believe it can. But I'll need your help. The acknowledgement lit a spark within David. It was the first time he felt like more than just an outsider peering in at their lives. They began strategizing, sketching out ideas onto a napkin, and for the first time, the concept seemed plausible. David's excitement bubbled over as he shared the idea with Marisol later that evening. I think we can create pathways for these women, help them find markets for their skills. I want to show them that their dreams matter just as much as mine. Marisol's gaze was piercing. You're ready to commit, David? This isn't just about ideas, it's about grit. Her words ignited both exhilaration and fear within him. Could he maintain this resolve when faced with resistance? When the walls of his well-structured reality began to crumble? I have to try, he declared, the weight of his decision becoming palpable. But another voice whispered within him a fear of inadequacy. What if they reject me, or worse, what if I fail them? As he sat in silence, doubt loomed over him like an impending storm. The next day would not only initiate an effort to empower others but also mark the beginning of a personal test: could he truly forge connections through vulnerability and commitment? With apprehension coiling tightly in his gut, David made a promise to himself: he would break through the echo chamber of his privilege and embrace this audacious endeavor, even if it meant confronting the turmoil of his past and recognizing the ghosts that lingered. As he prepared for what lay ahead, David knew he would soon face a crucial moment. The time to present this initiative to the women he aimed to support was approaching. Would they embrace his vision, or would he become just another figure in their lives, symbolizing empty promises? The stakes had never felt higher, and he steeled himself for the outcome that would shape not just their futures, but his own. Doubt gnawed at David as he walked towards the cafe the following afternoon. The elaborate plans he had crafted with Noor felt fragile against the specter of uncertainty. Instead of the confident stride he had intended, he found himself shuffling through the crowded streets, the cacophony of life further amplifying his internal conflict. Would these women see him as a partner or merely another wealthy man with misplaced intentions? He arrived at Maya's cafe, where the scent of fresh coffee blended with the warm aroma of pastries. The ambience pulsated with life, yet it felt foreign to him in this moment. He aligned himself with the small group gathered at a corner table, women whose resilience he had only begun to understand. Each face he approached seemed like a puzzle piece, critical to the picture he hoped to create. Noor greeted him with a nod. Are you ready? Her voice was steady, but he noticed the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She too was standing at the edge of something profound. Ready as I'll ever be, David replied, the words escaping his lips like a desperate breath. Swallowing back his apprehension, he took a seat and initiated the conversation. I want to share the ideas we discussed and see if we can plan a way forward. As he spoke, he watched their reaction carefully. The room was filled with the silent dance of skepticism and curiosity. Each question they posed pulled him deeper into their realities, challenging his preconceived notions. They questioned his motivations, probing into the sincerity behind his intentions. What do you really know about our lives? You live a different reality, one of the women challenged, her tone unyielding. David's heart raced. The question hung heavily in the air. Instead of retreating, he leaned into the challenge. You're right. I don't know enough. But I want to learn. I've seen as much as I can from the outside, but I need to understand the intricacies of your experiences. He noticed Noor's eyes narrow slightly, as if sizing him up. Would he pass the test? With each story shared the struggles, the triumphs, the burdens. They forged a shared connection. David took notes, engaging them in dialogue about their skills and aspirations. As individual narratives unfolded, he began to understand the depth of their ambitions would exceed even his own. The weight of their dreams settled upon him like a mantle. He felt responsible for nurturing them, but as empowerment began to weave through the room, doubt again intruded. What if the program was a failure? What if they found the resources they lacked were insurmountable? What if I can't secure funding? He thought anxiously. Look, Noor interjected, breaking through his spiral of insecurity, funding is just one part of this. We need to be able to pivot and adapt, take risks, and embrace uncertainty. If you're here to help us, we need transparency. There will be challenges. Her words resonated. Challenges. He understood that they could only move forward as a collective, including the risk of failure. David took a deep breath and nodded. You're right. If we do this, we have to be prepared to face setbacks together. I'll do everything in my power to support you and learn from whatever may come. As the meeting progressed and ideas began to take shape, the anxiety that had coiled around him gradually loosened its grip. He began to see glimmers of potential in their collaboration, a framework of mutual respect, solidarity, and vision. Yet, even as a flicker of hope ignited within him, deeper questions emerged from the shadows. Would this newfound purpose truly anchor his existence, or would he find himself drifting, once again unmoored in unfamiliar waters? The atmosphere shifted as Noor and the others exchanged glances filled with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Suddenly, David felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. The onus was on him to navigate uncharted territory, one that intertwined their fates with his. As they closed the meeting, an unspoken tension lingered in the air. It all felt precarious. What would it take to build the trust necessary for them to believe in this journey? David's mind whirred with thoughts of the presentation he must prepare for the women, one that would require him to confront not only their doubts but his own insecurities. The very idea felt like a precipice once again, a cliff of revelation awaiting him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Standing before the prospect of real change, would he rise to the occasion, or would he find himself lost in the ambivalence of his privilege? With night descending, David stepped away, aware that true development meant embracing discomfort. The time for action had come, but the real challenge lay ahead. The women would soon confront their realities, pushing against cultural expectations and economic barriers. Would he navigate their struggles with compassion, or would he falter in the heat of expectations and presumption? The next chapter of his life awaited, demanding clarity and courage. Would he harness it, or would he retreat into the complacency that once defined him? David awoke the next morning, the weight of his new role pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. Today was not just any day, it marked the beginning of a journey, one where he aimed to transcend the confines of his previous life and step into a realm demanding vulnerability, understanding, and growth. He felt the familiar pang of doubt tighten its grip, but he also sensed an undercurrent of resolve boiling beneath the surface, a flicker of change. As he prepared for his presentation, each word he wrote felt critical yet heavy with consequence. His intention was to inspire, to share a vision of empowerment that he hoped would resonate with the women whose stories had unwrapped parts of his own identity. Yet, he wrestled with the fear that his privilege would overshadow their voices, transforming his well-meaning intentions into mere patronization. Pacing across his apartment, he reflected on the stories shared at the cafe. Faces swam in his mind, each holding an unspoken world of experiences. Interviewing them, he had felt like a spectator to tragic plays, some triumphant, others heart-wrenching. He needed to relinquish the illusion of control. It became clear that real collaboration would not be about him leading, but rather about co-creating a path forward. He spent the morning shaping his presentation, crafting it into an interactive experience that would allow for dialogue, not monologue. He highlighted their strengths, their resilience, and the very fabric of their dreams. His aim was to evoke trust, to weave a tapestry of partnership that celebrated their narratives while revealing his own commitment to learn. As he arrived at the cafe, he felt the air thickening with anticipation. They congregated, a mixture of nervous energy and eager curiosity painting their faces. nor stood at the forefront, her posture reflective of her unique ability to command attention while maintaining vulnerability. "Let us see what you've got for us, David," she said, a hint of challenge lacing her playful tone. He took a deep breath, exhaling the remnants of his self-doubt. This was the moment. "Thank you all for being here today. I know I have a lot to learn, but together, I believe we can cultivate something amazing. My aim is to showcase the strengths you've shared with me and to outline a collaborative plan moving forward." He watched their expressions shift, intrigue blending with skepticism as he illustrated their shared goals. His words were no longer mere strategies, they transformed into a shared vision that acknowledged their realities and embraced the uncertainty of the journey. Questions erupted from the group, sharp and insightful. They challenged him, demanding clarity on how he would navigate potential setbacks. Were his commitments sincere? Could he really put in the effort to support them through the inevitable struggles? "Failure is part of the process," he acknowledged, feeling the atmosphere shift. "I can't promise certainty, but I'm here to walk alongside you, to stand by you when challenges arise." As the session progressed, David noticed something transformative happening. The room began to pulse with energy, a shared conviction emerging, a collective acceptance of their challenges and goals. It felt like they were shedding layers of mistrust, slowly weaving a bond formed from honesty and commitment, yet a darker thought lurked at the fringes of his consciousness. How far would they move forward? Would this fragile connection withstand the pressure of reality? He could sense the precipice before them, a steep descent into the rawness of their shared journey, fraught with the potential for both soaring heights and devastating falls. Suddenly, a pressing question erupted from one of the women, a question that plunged into the heart of their collective effort. What happens if we fail? If we try, put in all this effort, and nothing changes? At that moment, David understood that his answer would shape the bond between them. The weight of his privilege surged again, raw and undeniable. He was not merely a facilitator, he inherited responsibility for each of their dreams and aspirations. "The fear of failure must not paralyze us," he responded, conviction sharpening his voice. "Our commitment to each other is what will carry us through the storms. If we stumble, let's stumble together." The air crackled, uncertainty mingling with the prospect of unity. David's heart raced. Had he provided reassurance or heightened their fears? In that intensity, a fire ignited within him, forcing him to confront a pivotal truth of leadership. It demanded courage, perseverance, and an unwavering accountability, a steep challenge he had not foreseen when embarking on this journey. He realized this partnership would require him to dig deeper into himself, navigate his beliefs, and confront his biases head-on. It was daunting but exhilarating. A test of character was inching nearer. As he concluded, the weight of the moment bore down on him. Would he prove capable of sustaining these new relationships, or would he unravel in the face of mounting expectations? The very essence of his existence began to twist between fear and ambition, a dichotomy that demanded resolution. With the session closing, David left feeling a shiver of uncertainty matched the spark of optimism ignited within that cafe. The growing bond couldn't overshadow the lurking specter of inevitable hurdles. And as he stepped outside, one haunting question lingered in his mind: what would it take to meet those challenges, not just with competence but with the authenticity required to preserve their newfound trust? David wandered the streets, his mind swirling with the echoes of the day's conversations. Each step felt laden, almost as if the weight of expectations from the women he had just collaborated with clung to him like a second skin. He had them all looking to him for guidance, and the enormity of that responsibility gnawed at him. Could he truly deliver? As night enveloped the city, he found himself at the park, a familiar refuge where he could think without interruption. The trees stood sentinel around him, whispering secrets in the soft rustle of leaves. He settled onto a bench, the chill in the air a stark reminder of the discomfort that comes with authentic leadership. It dawned on him that vulnerability wasn't merely a strategy, it was a core part of the journey. He fished out his notebook and began jotting down thoughts. With every stroke of the pen, he distilled feelings of inadequacy, transforming them into insights. What barriers did his privilege create? How could he dismantle the walls that shielded him from fully understanding the struggles of those he was trying to help? In that moment of self-reflection, he began to see connections forming. He recalled Noor's fierce determination and the raw authenticity with which the women shared their stories. David realized that their strengths were not simply the result of endurance, they were lessons in resilience that could reshape his understanding of commitment and empathy. With renewed urgency, he crafted an action plan, one that embraced their ideas while positioning himself not as a leader but as a fellow traveler on this uncharted path. How could they tackle the obstacles of systemic inequities? How could he provide practical support that recognized their agency? The urge to call Noor and the others overwhelmed him. They had begun to trust him, perhaps it was time for him to invite their thoughts into this evolving plan. He hesitated, weighed down by a paradox, the longing to connect without leading them down paths of unmet expectations, yet he visualized their faces, the glimmer of hope in their eyes, and charged onward. He texted Noor, his fingers trembling in anticipation of her response. "I have some ideas. Let us brainstorm together." The reply came swiftly, igniting a spark of hope within him. "I'm in. Let us figure this out together." Over the next few days, they engaged in intense discussions, allowing every concern and insight to surface. Each meeting was a delicate dance between vulnerability and empowerment, where David was equally a student and a participant. He discovered hidden strengths within himself, qualities that flourished under the warmth of collaboration. But with every gain, shadows of doubt loomed larger. One evening, as he sat with his laptop, drafting the plan they had formulated, a sudden realization sliced through him: was he truly ready for the emotional toll that would come with this journey? Heartfelt stories blended with his emotional investment, and he feared how he would react if things didn't go as envisioned. How much more would he need to give? The phone buzzed on the table, jolting him from his spiraling thoughts. The group's chat lit up with a message from one of the women. "What do we do if we face serious resistance? If people reject us or our ideas?" Reading her words, he felt the full force of their fears. What would happen if they ventured into vulnerability only to encounter hostility or doubt? How could they shield one another from the blows that reality could deliver? David rubbed his temples, grappling with the myriad implications of her question. He understood that meaningful change required confronting these uncomfortable realities head-on. What could he say that would guide them without making promises he might not be able to keep? As he typed a tentative response, the tension within him swelled. "We face it together, just as we've been doing. That's our strategy, our safety net. But I need to share something with all of you. I'm scared too." The words left his fingertips, and he felt exposed. Yet as he hit send, a strange sense of freedom washed over him. He was not alone in this. They were embarking collectively on a journey fraught with uncertainty. The messages poured in, a flood of reassurance filled the chat. It was more than camaraderie, it was an unspoken pact to navigate the depths of both triumph and unease. But the deeper truth stirred within David. How long could this camaraderie withstand his own frailties, his own potential failures? As night settled in, he couldn't shake the lingering apprehension. What if he wasn't enough? What if his revelations and learnings could not protect them from the inevitable pitfalls ahead? The fear pulsed within him, a visceral reminder of the stakes involved. From that moment it was clear, this was only the beginning. He sensed a confrontation with his own limitations was on the horizon. And as David looked out into the starlit sky, the looming question reframed within him: when would he have to face the unyielding truth of his own vulnerabilities? As dawn broke the next day, David's restless night bore the weight of sleepless introspection. Shadows of doubt loomed over him, heavier than before. He replayed the chat conversations in his mind, searching for reassurance amidst the urgency of their undertaking. What lay ahead required not just resilience but an unwavering commitment to authenticity. Yet, was he equipped to navigate the murky waters of vulnerability and potential rejection? He met Noor and the others at the small cafe where they would often gather. The familiar scent of coffee wafted through the air, but he found it difficult to focus on anything other than the knot twisting in his stomach. They had boldly accepted his invitation to brainstorm together, but did every consensus they reached deepen their collective resolve or compound his anxiety? David sat quietly as the women exchanged animated thoughts, their passion mimicking the warmth of the sun filtering through the windows. But he was struck by a growing realization: every idea shared sent out ripples of possibility, yet his mind remained shackled to apprehension. Could they truly navigate the treacherous landscape ahead? "I know some of you are worried about resistance we might face," he began, his voice cracking ever so slightly. The table fell silent as they turned their attention to him. "But this isn't just a project for change. It's a deeply personal journey for us all." As he spoke, he grasped the gravity of leadership. His role wasn't solely to offer guidance but also to foster a dialogue steeped in shared vulnerability. We should prepare for opposing views. Instead of avoiding it, how do we confront it head-on? Shireen shifted in her seat, her brow furrowed. But what if our message gets twisted or downplayed? We'll be risking our credibility for change. Her question peeled back layers of his own anxiety, revealing the immense stakes of their undertaking. David took a deep breath. "Exactly. I think it's time to frame our message in a way that is irrefutable. What if we create not just narratives but data to back it up? Concrete examples that resonate with those who might challenge us." Intrigued expressions brightened around the table. Noor nodded in agreement, her determination radiating. A dual strategy: emotional stories paired with undeniable facts. "I'm in." Each woman offered their commitment, igniting a spark that rekindled David's wavering confidence. They started devising strategies, plan upon plan: how to present their messages, identify potential allies, prepare for pushback. With every word exchanged, he embraced the tension as a necessary catalyst for growth, yet still, as the meeting wrapped up, a shadow cast a pall over his heart. What if their advocacy became a vulnerability that drew severe backlash? He sensed the tide turning in his own mind. The aim was to blend his newfound courage with the unpredictability of others. How could he strengthen this collaborative effort without mustering false bravado? Days turned into nights, a whirlwind of meetings populated by laughter punctuated with moments of silence, heavy with unspoken concerns. David worked tirelessly to collect and organize their collective resources, but every decision bore a weight he struggled to bear on his own. He felt an overwhelming urge to protect them from failures that might come. It was one late evening, staring at the task list, when David stumbled upon a plausible solution. "Perhaps we can practice our storytelling methods with a small audience first. Set ourselves a trial run." The thought intrigued him, but did it risk exposing their raw vulnerability too soon? A palpable uncertainty hung in the air. What if they discovered their strategies weren't as solid as they believed? David debated, was the time for a practice session now, or should they wait until they armed themselves with even more data? As he contemplated, a sudden pang of realization struck him. He had always been so focused on creating a shield for them that he neglected his own necessity for growth and courage. He turned to his notebook, scribbling down a question. What chokes our voices? What are we truly scared of when we think about being in front of an audience? As he pondered this, the depth of his own fears echoed in a haunting truth: they were grappling not just with external criticism, but with their own anxieties. That was the key. They needed to confront the ghosts of insecurity standing in their way. As he rejoined the group in a virtual meeting, David could already sense the momentum building. They flitted between laughter and shared fears. Just as he was about to suggest the practice run, the conversation shifted. What if we face hostility? What if our project fails? Shireen's voice trembled with worry. This was a pivotal moment. The very query David had feared seemed to bond their voices in shared worry. This was no longer just about ideas, it was about building resilience amid uncertainty. But as he began to respond, a nagging doubt clawed at him. When would he truly confront the unyielding truth of his own limitations and fragility? A message pinged, drawing his attention away. A new text lit up from Noor, stirring both anticipation and concern in his chest. What awaited him on the other side of her message could redefine everything they had built. With a heart pounding for answers and palms slightly sweating, David opened the text, his breath hitching in his throat. The message read simply, "We need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow morning?" David stared at his screen, the world around him narrowing as adrenaline coursed through his veins. What could this mean? Was it about the project, or something more personal? Questions spiraled in his mind, each more desperate than the last. Immediately, he sensed not just his concern for Noor, but a flicker of his own growing apprehension. What if she had doubts about their mission? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across his workspace, David resolved to summon his courage. The next morning, he would approach the meeting with a willingness to listen, a chance to step past his own anxieties and focus on her perspective. When he arrived at the cafe, Noor was seated at a corner table, her fingers swirling the contents of a coffee cup. The spark in her eyes was dimmed, underscored by an inkling of vulnerability he had not seen before. As he sat opposite her, David grasped the weight of the moment. "What's on your mind, Noor?" he asked gently, sensing the heaviness in his own voice. She looked up, taking a breath as if to collect her thoughts. "David, I appreciate your enthusiasm for this project. You've been a true leader," she began, but her words were laced with hesitation. "However, I think we may need to reevaluate our approach. It's not just the resistance we face. I worry our emotional attachments to this journey are clouding our judgment." His gut tightened as he braced for the implications of her words. "Are you saying you want to pull back?" "No, not pull back," she reassured him, her tone softening. "I want us to be strategic here. Passion is important, but we must ground ourselves in reality. What if we don't resonate with the people we intend to reach?" David's mind raced. He realized her concerns mirrored his own unformulated fears. The storm of his insecurities collided with her clarity, pushing him to confront something he had avoided. Perhaps his enthusiasm had eclipsed the careful planning necessary for their success. "We could enhance our narrative with more structured feedback, I suppose," he conceded cautiously, feeling the firm grip of anxiety slacken just a bit, yet still lingering. Noor nodded, her eyes lighting up slightly. "What if we sought a diverse group of listeners, people who may disagree with us? Their critiques can point us toward better storytelling." Encouraged by her perspective, David felt a shift. This wasn't about failing or succeeding, it was about evolving. Each conversation provided an opportunity to refine their approach and build confidence. As they continued discussing diverse strategies and pragmatic applications, David found himself inhaling a deeper understanding of what leadership entailed. It was more than just suggesting ideas, it was collaborating within the shared realm of uncertainty and clarity. He recognized a pivotal moment: the fusion of intuition and data-driven decisions could fortify their mission, but a ripple of discomfort surfaced again when David contemplated what giving others a space for critique meant for him personally. What ghosts of criticism lingered if their approach missed the mark? He felt himself standing at the edge of a cliff, the winds of feedback swirling beneath him, urging him either to leap or withdraw entirely. "Let's build a conference call with a few trusted colleagues who might challenge us," David suggested. "It's crucial to get outside perspectives." As Noor smiled, something ignited within David, an emboldening realization. Confronting insecurities, reaching out, and allowing others to challenge them became pathways to growth. But with this understanding came a shadow of an impending challenge. Who would be willing to scrutinize their work? Was he ready for feedback that might expose his vulnerabilities yet again? The day pressed on with a newly rekindled energy, yet doubts loomed over David. Had he taken the right steps, or had he merely been foolhardy in assuming resilience would carry them through? Little did he know, the upcoming feedback session wasn't just an assessment of their project. It was a reckoning that would either fortify their resolve or unearth deeper truths he had yet to discover. And as he prepared for the next meeting, another message flew in from Noor, its content buried like a ticking time bomb in his mind. The moment had come for him to brace for the actual confrontation he had feared the most. How ready could David be for truths he had yet to acknowledge? David's heart raced as he read the message from Noor again. Her tone hinted at something urgent, something that pounded at the walls of his composure with each read. He took a moment to collect his thoughts, reflecting on their last conversation. A spotlight was now being cast on his leadership, and the uncertainty of how their peers would perceive their project loomed large. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Each hour felt like a countdown towards impact. By the time he arrived at the scheduled feedback session, which he had arranged with a blend of optimism and dread, a knot of apprehension coiled in his gut. It was time for him to face the inevitable critique. As the video call began, for familiar faces appeared on the screen. They were respected colleagues, each with distinct perspectives that would either validate their efforts or lay bare their shortcomings. Intellectually, David had prepared himself to listen. Emotionally, however, he was on unstable ground. The desire for approval was at odds with the necessity for constructive confrontation. Once introductions passed, David took a deep breath. "Thank you all for joining," he began, his voice steadier than he felt. "Nor and I have been working on a project aimed at XYZ. We're eager to hear your honest thoughts." A wave of critiques washed over him. Some comments were grounded in genuine concern about their narrative's clarity, others pointed towards a disconnect with their target audience. With each feedback nugget, his stomach clenched tighter. Their words painted a landscape of doubts he had worked tirelessly to suppress. Yet, as they spoke, there was a stark realization: the discomfort he felt signaled growth. "Your passion is clear," one colleague noted. "But I sense that the emotional ties are leading to some bias. Can you neutralize that?" Another chimed in: "It's not enough to rely solely on feelings, you need to provide evidence of impact. Get metrics, show us data." David observed their reactions, deciphering the mix of sincerity and professional obligation in their voices. With each suggestion, a thought crystallized: he had to confront the very fears that had plagued him. What if their work was indeed flawed? What if they missed the opportunity they had yearned for? Suddenly, confronting these very real possibilities felt like shedding layers of a protective skin he no longer needed. "Thank you for the input," he said, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "What I am trying to understand is how we can adapt without losing the core message. It's this very message that drove us forward in the first place." The conversation continued, an ebb and flow of perspectives merging into one focus, an evolving narrative shaped by both emotion and analytics. David realized he was not simply a leader presenting his vision, he was a vessel for collaboration, pulling together diverse thoughts into a cohesive strategy. As he actively engaged in the dialogue, his sense of agency evolved. What began as a defensive posturing morphed into collaborative inquiry, a shift from fearing the "what if" to embracing the potential of "let us discover." This revelation became a silken thread weaving courage and vulnerability together. The session drew to a close, but the emotional weight lingered. Despite feeling exposed, David could sense the potential this challenge had ignited within him. A shimmering possibility sparked in his mind. The very feedback that initially threatened him had propelled him toward a deeper understanding of both the project and himself. Reflecting on the day's revelations, David acknowledged that winning approval was no longer his singular focus. Each critique had unveiled fragments of a resilience that had been waiting to emerge. But just as he settled into this newfound perspective, another message from Nor appeared on his screen, marked by urgency. The stark reality of the outcomes from today's feedback session would soon crystallize. A critical decision awaited them. David felt a jolt of awareness. This was not merely about evolving a project, but about navigating his own expanding capacity to lead through uncertainty. The insistent drum of anticipation echoed in his mind, as one poignant thought simmered at the back of his consciousness: how would he measure their success amidst the feedback storm? What would he truly discover about himself when the next barrier triggered a deeper reckoning? David Hawthorne's journey reached a pivotal moment as he stood before the women whose lives he had vowed to enrich. The atmosphere in Maya's cafe was electrified with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Today, he would unveil their structured plan to tackle the barriers they had identified together, one that not only aimed to empower but to actively engage. David was about to transform from a mere benefactor to a partner in their journey, and a visceral blend of pride and anxiety churned within him. In that moment, he reflected on the evolution of his role. He had begun as an outsider, detached in a world of privilege, and now emerged not just as a supporter but as a collaborator. He had committed himself to a path of unlearning biases and embracing vulnerability, tearing down the walls built by his wealth and privilege. This was a profound transformation, and he was prepared to take the next step. As the meeting commenced, he laid out the strategy they had developed, a mentorship program that would not only sustain the women's dreams but enhance their skills through collaboration and innovation. Our goal is to create a framework, he announced, confidence radiating from his voice, one where your voices and skills are at the center. We will secure funding based on data and evidence of impact. Maya's eyes sparkled with a mixture of skepticism and hope. Will you really walk alongside us in this? Take the risk of failure? Her question bore the weight of previous experiences where the promises had faltered. Absolutely, David replied, the steadiness of his gaze conveying authenticity. I am committed to this. We're in this together, and I won't step back when challenges arise. The response from Noor was quick. Then let us name our network and start shaping our narrative. We need to reach out into the community. An electric enthusiasm buzzed through the air, and David recognized this moment as a turning point not just for them, but for himself. He had embraced situations that demanded accountability and challenged him to grow personally and professionally. Once driven solely by ambition, he now found himself propelled by a commitment to uplift others. They formed spontaneous working groups right there, passion igniting ideas into plans of action. Days turned into weeks, and as they gathered information, contacts, and potential allies, David's confidence solidified. Together, they crafted powerful stories that illustrated the importance of mentorship and community support amidst broader societal burdens. Along the way, David received validation from his peers through glowing reviews, praising the authenticity of their collective approach. This external recognition was unexpected. It reinforced his belief that empathy and collaboration could yield tangible results. Now, standing in front of the community at their first informational meeting, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The room was filled with skeptics and supporters alike, but as he shared their journey, vulnerability, setbacks, and successes, a palpable energy transformed the atmosphere. This isn't just about success for me, he shared, his voice steady yet heartfelt. It's about us being courageous enough to redefine our narratives together. Some people nodded in agreement while others leaned in closer, intrigued. David held his ground, empowered by their interest. They had truly connected, and he was no longer alone in his responsibility. The initiative flourished, mentorship blossomed, and skills transformed into opportunities. Women began launching micro-businesses, fostering connections that created ripple effects of change within their communities. David embraced feedback as a tool for growth, and his fear of failure morphed into a dedication to adapt and reshape their journey continuously. As the culmination of their efforts drew closer, recognition came in the form of new partnerships with organizations that were eager to support the program. Those who once feared rejection became advocates, strengthened by their shared triumphs and tenacity. David stood resolute. In that moment, embodying the evolution of his identity. He no longer felt like a spectator but rather a vital player in the narrative of reclaiming agency. He savored the realization that he had achieved personal growth while positively impacting others. This newfound confidence didn't just emerge from accolades. David discovered that true accomplishment lay in cultivating connections, fostering inclusivity, and dismantling the barriers that once isolated him. It was a full-circle moment that enriched not just the women's lives but his own. As he surveyed the room filled with vibrant women poised for transformation, he knew he had achieved something meaningful. They had forged partnerships that transcended societal constraints, and David had moved from a life of privilege to one rooted in purpose and growth. This journey illuminated the path of success not defined by wealth, but by unity and vision. Together, they would continue to foster opportunities that sparked possibility in the face of adversity. Now, more than ever, he felt ready to embrace the unfolding potential ahead. The shadows of doubt that had clouded his path had been replaced by the brilliant light of assurance and fulfillment, a testament to a journey completed with growth and impactful achievements. If you want to witness more stories of transformation and empowerment, subscribe immediately to the channel. You need to subscribe now to stay connected with exclusive emotional stories that inspire and uplift. Don't wait even one more second to share this journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. We absolutely want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. And don't forget to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful journey of personal overcoming. Let us spread empowerment today.